Good morning. Can you hear me?
So I'm supposed to introduce Jeff. This is Jeff. He's going to give his testimony today. But before he does that, let's all say hi to one another. You want to get up and meet somebody new?
Good morning, Coquilala Bible Church. It's nice to see you guys. If I screw this up, you guys can blare Gary Metters for that because he's the one who got me into this trouble. So thanks, Gary. I appreciate you. As Steve would say, can I go heart to heart with you guys? Because it's going to get dirty, I'm just saying. I'd like to start off with some statistics, and what these statistics are called the cycle of destruction. 63% of youth suicides come from fatherless families. 71% of teen pregnancies come from fatherless families. 90% of runaways and homeless kids come from fatherless families. 85% of men and women in prison come from fatherless families. 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless families. And 75% of kids in alcohol and drug rehab centers come from fatherless families. So now that I've set the theme, I'd like to tell you a little bit about me. I was born in California, raised in Las Vegas. We moved there when I was 4 years old. Back then, it was a great place, you know. Not that it was run by the mob, but because it was run by the mob, it was a great place. My dad worked for General Electric, and General Electric told him, we'll send you any place in the United States you want to go, just because of his sales tactics and performance. And he said, I want to go to Vegas. And they thought that was the dumbest idea ever, because Vegas was in the middle of the desert at that time, and there was a population of about 100,000 people. But they did it. And as soon as we moved there, my dad bought my brother and I motorcycles, and we got into racing dirt bikes at a young age. And, you know, what else do you do in the desert? You got to play in the desert. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for probably the first 6 or 7 years of my childhood, and then she went to work at the hospital, one of the hospitals in Vegas. When I was 6 years old, just to give you an idea of a very unique upbringing as a child, my dad and I drove down to Phoenix, Arizona, and Billy, could I have you hand me my bottle, please, my bottle of water? Thank you, brother. Drove down to Phoenix, Arizona, and picked up a trailer load of steel that I had no idea what it was, but it looked like fun. And when we got home, we started building a helicopter in our garage. So at a young age, my dad taught me a trade and told me as long as I had a trade, I would always be able to make it. And he wasn't lying. After we built that helicopter, I was going to bring pictures, but I couldn't find them. I'm sorry for that. So after we built the helicopter, we built 2 or 3 off-road race cars because all of his buddies from California were off-road racers, and you know, it just kind of fit into the whole racing mentality and being out in the desert and playing in the dirt and all that fun stuff. When I was 7 years old, my dad, or actually let me step back for a second. When I was 6 years old, my dad quit GE and started working for himself. He opened up his own business. And one of the gentlemen that helped him do that was an inventor and had quite a bit of money. And for some reason, the connection I'm not really sure of, but one of my dad's best friends from California was an LA County sheriff. And at that time, they were getting ready to change over from the Thompson submachine gun to the M16. And my dad and this gentleman ended up buying 220 Thompson machine guns from the LA County Sheriff's Department. And at that point in time, my dad now became one of the largest machine gun dealers in the United States. And that just grew, because once you're in, you're in. It's kind of like a boys' club. And just a crazy thing. Like my whole life I grew up thinking, well, why are you guys not building cars and motorcycles and helicopters why do you park your car in your garage? That's dumb. That's a little kid's mentality. Like nobody else in the neighborhood was doing it, just my family. So pretty unique childhood growing up. I would say up until the age of 6 years old, there's a song by Rodney Atkins called Watching You. And I don't know if you guys know the song or not, but I would highly recommend listening to it because it's an awesome song for a dad and a son or a daughter. But it just talks to how, as little kids, we're sponges. We pick up on everything our parents do, and we want to be like them. And that's why it's called Watching You, because that's what he's doing. At 7 years old, my dad started not being around a whole lot because he started his own company and was, working on creating a business. He was contracted by Bally's Gaming to create a system that processed all the change in all the casinos in the world. Nobody ever competed with us. If you've ever seen the movie Casino, there's a huge scene where they're in the back room, what they call the hard count room, and that's where the guy walks in and gets the cash out of the safe and walks out. Nobody asks any questions, nothing. That room, that conveyor system that's in that room is the system that my dad built. Excuse me. By the time I was 8, things had gone really, really bad. My dad wasn't around hardly ever. And as a little boy, you don't understand that. They just disappear from your life and you don't really get that, he's working, he's trying to put food on the table, he's trying to pay the bills, but at the same time, he's not spending any time with you or your brother or your mom. So, unfortunately, I had a friend around the corner who had an older brother who sold drugs. And I started smoking weed at the age of 8 years old. In 1973, that was very, very prominent. It was the 70s, the hippie age. Everybody smoked weed, but not most 8-year-old kids. And I was one of them. Shortly after that, they separated, and just to honor Steve's wish, I don't use the D word, but they ended up doing the D word. So after that, it basically literally was like he disappeared. I saw him maybe twice a year, Christmas and birthday kind of thing. Obviously, smoking was hiding the pain that I had as a little boy. And I didn't understand that, but I knew that when I smoked, I felt better. It made me feel like detached from that pain. And, it's a pain that really never really goes away, really. After that, I was hit with like a gamut of emotions. Stories that you start in your head, like your dad doesn't love you, and abandonment issues, and unworthiness, and all of that turned into hatred and anger for my dad. And at a young age, I really started to resent any time that I got to spend with him. But there was still that little inkling in me as a little boy that wanted his dad back, But I never got that. Well, at this age, I never got that. I did see him every once in a while, mostly when we did get together, we did things that he wanted to do. And sometimes that was fun because he'd take me out to the desert and we'd shoot machine guns and I would get to blow off a little steam, so to speak. I remember one time he sat me down on the ground on a piece of carpet like this and put a big rock behind me and put a 50 caliber machine gun in front of me with a box of ammunition and just told me, push that red button and don't stop until it stops. I don't know if you guys know anything about guns and ammo. I'm assuming pretty much all of you do. That was one of the funnest things I've ever done in my entire life. Of course, I was about 8 feet back from where I started, and him and his buddies were standing there drinking beer, just laughing and laughing. It's probably the funniest thing they'd ever seen. As I got closer to high school, my freshman year, you're around 14, 15 years old when you start your freshman year in high school, and I was introduced to a plethora of other drugs. And at that point in time, weed just wasn't doing it. So I started doing Quaaludes. Quaaludes were the drug of choice at that point in time for me because it literally erased my memory. There was no such thing as a bad day on Quaaludes. And then mushrooms, LSD, cocaine, and of course alcohol. So, how I made it through high school, I'll never know, really. The addiction process kicked in. It was more important for me every day to do some sort of drug, alcohol, some pain escaping situation. It was pretty bad at that time. I remember my freshman year, we took a trip from Vegas up to Northern California to see my great-grandmother, who was 98 years old at the time. And while we were driving there was on the other side of the freeway a band of motorcycles that was, when I got the newspaper article a couple of days later, there was 2,000 1% motorcycle club riding down the freeway on the opposite side of the road. And I was like, there it is. There's my future. That's what I want right there. And the newspaper article said that one of the presidents had died, or vice presidents had died, and the club from all over that area had got together for the funeral procession. So with that in my mind, I wish I had that newspaper article because it was something that would be good to have for this as a reminder. That became my goal in life, was to be a biker. I thought, got a band of brothers, 2,000 deep, don't have to worry about anything, sell drugs, do all of this stuff. In high school, I started selling drugs. That financed my first motorcycle. And, slowly but surely started to work my way into that lifestyle. I would say from 1980 to 1997, I lived as hard and fast as I could. There was nothing getting in the way of that. Drug addiction, alcohol addiction, sexual addiction, gambling addiction, and just plain lawlessness. Of course, in Vegas, it's Sin City, right? They breed that. They promote it. They glorify it. If you're a good guy, they don't want to put you to the side. We want the bad guys, right? Our mayor was sponsored by Bombay Gin and was a lawyer for the mob. I mean, what other state has that kind of history? What kind of other city has that kind of history? Excuse me. But nothing that I could do got rid of that pain. Every day when I woke up, I woke back up to that pain. Every time I came out of that stupor, I woke back up to that pain. And it just fueled more and more and more addiction, more and more problems in my life. So back up to 1991, my dad called me and asked me if I wanted to come to work for him. And I had a thought run through my mind that, well, I can either go to work for him and work on a relationship, or I can go to work for him and try to destroy him, because at that time I was that angry. I'm not proud to say that, but that's how I felt. That little kid inside me, that's exactly how he felt. And you know how little kids are, they throw their temper tantrums, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, and then everything's good, you know? Well, it wasn't everything's good. I was still very angry with him. Now, with the business, we traveled all over the world together, he and I. And for 5 years, literally put more than 1 million miles in the air. All over Europe, South America, South Africa, England, all these different places. And, you know, it's a long flight. And never had a conversation with him to understand or to know who he is. I never knew who the guy was. And there was a part of me that really, really wanted to know, and a part of me that, you know, now that we're together, I guess I should just take this. It's like, you know, the whole, what is it? Bad energy is good energy kind of thing, or bad behavior. You know, whatever your repercussions are, you're still getting attention. And that was something that, you know, I fought with every single day that I worked for him, because it wasn't what I expected it to be as a father and son. In my mind, I wanted him to apologize to me for all the things that he had done when I was a little boy. And in my mind, I'm sure he wanted me to apologize to him for all of the things that I had done to him. I mean, I told my dad I hated him and I wished he would die. You know, who says that to your dad? I mean, that's not a good thing. In 1997, I was supposed to take it was going to be a business trip, and I was supposed to take some stuff down to a casino in San Diego and then go spend a week with my uncle, which my stepmom considered personal. So my truck broke down, and I was going to take the work truck. And we got into this huge fight, and I mean huge fight. Now, she's 5 feet, weighs maybe 100 pounds, and she just lost her mind. And she came up to me and was, you know, I just kind of laughed in her face, because there was an ignorance in me, an arrogance in me, because she was my stepmom. Like, so what, you know? And so we had a huge blow up, and I realized that the repercussions of that were not going to be good. So I went home and started drinking and smoking and trying to kind of forget about the day. And the Holy Spirit, I know now it was the Holy Spirit, said to me, you need to call your dad and get complete with this. I was like, where's that coming from? Like, I literally audibly heard that. And I resisted, and the more I resisted, the more conviction I got. The more conviction I got, the more drugs and alcohol I did. But when I woke up, that conviction was still there. So I called him, and I said, we need to have a conversation. And I had to ask for something that I didn't think was even possible, but I told him, I said, I need you to be present in this conversation. I don't want you to worry about work. I don't want you to worry about going to Sandpoint. I don't want you to worry about doing the things that you're going to do, because this is going to be a heavy conversation, a very heavy conversation. And he said, okay, you got it. So the next day I went over to his office, and as I'm walking into his office, my stepmom walks up to me, and I mean, she is beet red. She is so angry. And she looks up at me and she's pointing her finger and she says, I don't care if I ever see your effing face again, which was huge, because she has a huge heart. I would never expect to hear her say that to anybody, but she said it to me. So we went in and we had a 4-hour conversation. And in this 4-hour conversation, I brought some things up that he had done to my brother and I that she knew nothing about. And in the conversation, she got up and was like, how dare you accuse your dad of that? That is just ludicrous. And I'm like, he's right there, ask him. I wouldn't accuse him of something to his face if I didn't think he did it. Ask him. And he's like, yeah, I did it. And that came up 3 or 4 times. So after that, she just sat down and didn't really say anything, didn't want to say anything. And, one of the things that he said to me in this conversation, like, I just dumped on him. I got rid of every bit of anger and angst and hatred that I could get rid of on him. And at the same time, cried and laughed and did everything, and he did the same thing. And in my mind, we kind of were getting complete, right? We were getting this out in the open. And at the end of it, I got up and I said, do you have anything else that you feel like you need to get off your chest? And he said, no. And I said, okay. I said, I feel great about the conversation. This is where it sits, And as I was walking out the door, he said, I just have one question for you. And I said, what's that? And he said, I still don't know what you want from me. And I said, okay. Now, I will tell you, I don't know where this came from. This is God speaking through me at this point in time, orchestrating this whole relationship, because it wouldn't have been me. I said, I think I was 30-something years old at that time. I said, for the last 20 years, I haven't had a dad. I haven't had a father. You just up and left and disappeared. And I understand that you were starting a business, trying to create, a life for everybody involved. But you disappeared from your kids. You disappeared from your wife. I said, so I want my dad. That's all I want. I want my dad. And I said, believe it or not, I can handle yes, and I can handle no. The thing that I can't handle is all of this in between that we've been going through for the past 27 years. I don't want it anymore. So if this is where you want to stay, you stay here. I said, you don't have to answer me right now. I work right next door. I work for you. You know where I'm at. You come and see me. He said, okay. Took him a month to come over. But I gave him a lot to chew on, and I gave him an out, So I just went to work and got my paychecks and did my thing, right? So in all of this, I'm still drinking, I'm still smoking, I'm still doing drugs. I'm still riding with 1%er clubs. Does everybody know what a 1%er club is? So back in the day, the guy's name was William Barry. In an interview, he was talking about motorcycle riders. And he said 90% of people who ride motorcycles for an activity, who enjoy, riding motorcycles. But there's that 1% that are outlaws. And the outlaws have taken that. They actually have a patch on their vest that says 1%. And they wear it proud. They're the 1%ers. They're the outlaws. They're the bad guys. And so I fell into that crowd because it promoted everything that I did. It did everything that I did. But the one thing that I didn't find there was a brotherhood. You got guys stabbing each other in the back. You got guys fighting over here. You got guys starting gunfights. You got guys doing all in the same club. Like that would be like you guys doing it in here right now. It doesn't happen that way. I'm looking for a brotherhood. My brother's a doctor in Moscow right now. Lives in Moscow, Idaho. We have a relationship. It's a little shaky because he's a Mormon, but, that's a whole nother testimony. But forgot where I was going with that all of a sudden. Oh, brotherhood. Once I became a Christian, which I'll get to in a second, I immediately immersed myself in Bible studies, men's groups, going to men's breakfast, things like that. And as a loner, I'm just watching how this whole thing works. I'm just paying attention to how people talk to each other, how people deal with certain situations, how things happen in a church, you know? And the one thing that I saw was that everybody was dealing with everybody in love, in respect. And I thought, that right there is where I want to be. That's what I want to do. That's brotherhood. So if you're not in a Bible study or a men's group or anything like that, do it. I guarantee you it'll change your life. So, you know, the one thing that he said to me in that conversation that put me on a path of not only self-discovery and personal growth and all that kind of stuff, was that he loved me the only way he knew how. And when I heard that, I had to think back about, okay, well, where did he learn it from? Well, his dad died when he was 19 years old of cancer. He had no man or men in his life to raise him up as a real man. And it's just a cycle. And I wasn't about to let that cycle keep going. I don't have kids. I've never been married, but at the same time, I don't treat people the way he treated people. And that was back in the day. But after that conversation, like I said, a month later, he came over. And he just said, I'm just here to see how you're doing and, you know, say hi and check up on you and make sure everything's okay. And I said, yeah, Dad. I said, you know, it's really good to see you. And, you know, he was in there for a couple of minutes. We just chatted. It was very superficial because we didn't even know how to navigate this situation. How do you navigate something where I'm 32, he's in his late 50s at that time, and we're trying to figure out, you know, life. But that, for the next 16 years, that relationship built into a relationship that never, ever, ever would I have expected, ever. And it wasn't just with my dad, it was with my stepmom as well. And, you know, you hear people, actually there's Bible verses on it. I did not write that Bible verse down, but it's the Bible verse that says if you have any kind of issue with a brother or a sister, lay it at the altar, go heal it, and come back. And then your offering at the altar. Come back and then make your offering. And once I heard that, I was like, that's exactly what I did. I laid my whole life out. I was ready to get fired. I was ready to, you know, not have a dad anymore. I was ready to do all of that, but I had been pushed to that limit. I had been pushed to that point as a man now, that I didn't want to do any of that stuff anymore. I was tired of running from the pain. I was tired of drinking myself to stupors and just doing stupid stuff. And, you know, the one thing that happened after, you know, a few years of that relationship building is all my addictions fell away. Every single one of them. I didn't have the desire because everything that I had been hurt by, I was healed. God healed me. And, you know, it's funny because we started, when this whole thing started happening again, we started building motorcycles again. We started building cars again. At this time, my dad was building antique aircraft, Stearman, they're called. And we built a couple of Stearman in his hangar out at the airport. But the thing with that is that it made me feel complete. You know, I all my life I had searched and fought and survived all of these things in my life because of this pain that I had gone through with my dad. But like I said, I felt complete with this relationship now, and like it felt like that was my life purpose. Like all the struggle, all the pain, everything that I went through as a kid, that it was all for that one moment for me to create a relationship with him. And it was an amazing feeling. And the one thing that I can say is that I know a lot of people don't have that opportunity. And that is a huge blessing to me that I did have that opportunity. But there's also a Father that can handle all of that for us and does on a daily basis. All you have to do is lay it at his feet, tell him about it, submit to him, let him know. So you'd think at this time that I'd see God working in my life, but that really wasn't what was going on. I hadn't given my life to Christ yet. And, all my life I believed in God, but I had no relationship. I had no idea who Jesus was. I had, well, we were Catholic. Where are you going to get any of that at, All I can think of is like stained glass windows, candles everywhere, pipe organ, really scary music. Yeah, I don't want that. And when my friends were asking me to go to church, I didn't want that. I didn't know. I didn't know what else there was out there. So in 2007, I bought a house. At that time, the market was kind of coming down, but nobody was really talking about a crash or anything like that yet. And by 2008, the market had crashed. In 2005, I should say this, in 2005, they closed the business. Indian Gaming put us out of business because they went to cards and tickets. So when you cash out, you just get a little ticket and then go put it in an ATM machine and you get your money. You don't get the ching, 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 ching anymore. Well, when Indian Gaming started, they never had ching, ching, ching. They just went straight to tickets and cards. So all the casinos, ended up putting a lot of people out of business or out of work. But they sold the business in 2005. I went and opened up a couple of businesses on my own and was doing fairly well, and that was when I bought my house. Hang on a second. So in 2008, I started losing both of the businesses because they were cash pay businesses. And also lost my stepdad, two of my mentors that had gotten me through a lot of this mess in my life, two close friends, very, very dear friends. And that was rough, man. That was like, I had had such a hardened heart for so many years that to be able to get close to people was a blessing, and it just happened. It wasn't something that I prayed on. It wasn't something I asked God for. I just started walking a different path, and I was introduced to different people. And to lose anybody at that point in time was just a nightmare. And then over the next 6 years, I lost 12 more friends, my grandmother, both my businesses, my dad, and my house. That put me in a darkness that I didn't even know existed. Like suicide was light at that point in time. And I started drinking again. Of course, it's what I do best. I go and hide, try to drown the pain away. Started doing drugs again. And literally, at that point, I think subconsciously I was trying to kill myself. I don't know that that's what I was doing, but I think that's what I was doing just because I couldn't get rid of the pain. So I was just drinking and drinking and drugging and doing everything that I could do to get rid of that pain, and it was not going away. Well, luckily, I meant to mention this. I didn't reach out to any of my friends at that point in time because 6 years, I'm like, this is like once every 3 or 4 months now I'm losing somebody, right? And it just seemed like every time I'd start to get my head out of water, something else had happened. Bloop, down to the bottom. I'm drowning in pain. I'm drowning in sorrow and grief. And so I didn't reach out to any of my friends because I didn't know if they were next. I didn't know if these people were going to die on me. I didn't know what God had planned or what whoever had planned at that point in time, but I just isolated myself, which was the worst thing in the world to do. But I did it. Luckily, I had two friends that were Christian, that were very, very close friends of mine that were praying fervently for me and asking me every day to go to church with them. Ronnie and Jennifer Mendoza are their names. And one day they invited me over for one of their kids' birthday parties. Ronnie is 7 inches taller than me, tattooed from head to toe, was a professional tattoo artist for many years. And he's sitting next to me. He's like, so, you gonna go to church with us on Sunday? And I said, you know what? Yeah, I am. And Jennifer lost her mind because she'd asked me 1,000 times, and I said no. And he asked me once, and I said yes. So in March of 14, I went to church with them. Little did I know that it was the 1-year anniversary of my dad's death. And, in a lifestyle like this, it's survival. It's just pure survival. The whole time, my whole life, I've just been surviving. And I walked in, and they have this awning that goes from one building to the next, and it says, this is where the journey begins. And I was like, pretty fancy. And I walked in, and now this is a 15,000 people church congregation, 5,000 people services. I'm in the front row. Not good. But when the pastor was talking, it was that service that I'm pretty sure most of you have experienced where there was nobody else in the building but me. At first. At second, I'm like, you guys told this dude my whole life. Like, how does he know all this information about me? And she's like, this is God talking to you, man. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I said, as I was walking into the building, I was like, God, you need to make it evident to me that I'm supposed to be here. Obviously, that service was meant for me, and that service was on submitting to Christ, submitting to God. And, that day when I did submit myself to God, he filled my God-shaped hole in my heart. And it's been filled ever since. A week later, I got baptized. As I said before, I, got very involved in men's groups and the men's ministry there and Bible studies and realized that I can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. That's why we have brothers and sisters in a congregation to fellowship, to bring us up, to, when we're down, we bring them up. When they're down, we bring them up. And it's been a glorious ride ever since, Christ, it's not all what I always tell everybody, well, I'm just going to go get baptized. Okay, well, you might want to know what you're doing before you do, because it's not all unicorns and rainbows. I'm just saying, we get tested and, we pass and fail. But you know what? God's always with us. And, the abandonment issue that I had with my real dad when he passed away came up strong when he died. I literally lost who I was. And I have an identity in Christ now. And that identity is far more important to me than that relationship was. This relationship here is the only thing that counts. So, in that, I have 3 requests to wind this up. I'm pretty sure. Am I good on time? Couple minutes? Okay. My first request, because this is all about father and son relationships, is that, men, if you have young boys, raise them to be better men than you. Be the dad that they're proud to talk about. Be the dad that is, basically their God until they meet God. Because if you don't, this is the avenue they're going to take. You could tell by the percentages, right? They speak for themselves. Those are statistics that are online. You can look them up anytime you want. The other thing is that, dads of daughters, you might not know this, but women, this is the first time I've ever said this to a group, but I know this because I've confirmed it with a few other women. Your dad is the first man that you fall in love with. And if you're not a very good dad, she's going to constantly chase that not very good person. If you're a good dad and you're the dad that she just knows and loves, set that bar high, super high, so that the man that she does marry is a man that not only she's proud of, but you're proud of. Amen? Thank you for letting me speak.